Why hasn't he listened to Reali? I feel like he could give him good advice.
I don't think it's that easy to teach likable. I think it's really hard. I would say that I told Reali this the other day. I think we said it during the South Beach session that we did. His greatest gift is likability. It's what makes, like, of course he's good at television. He's very good at television. But people don't leave Reali not liking Reali. I'll tell you this about somebody else, too, because I was talking about this with Eduardo Perez last night during the live cast, this live stream that was baseball while the basketball draft was going on. Tim Kirkshin is the rarest of media entities that has fed all his life off of baseball and clubhouses, and no one has anything bad to say about Tim Kirkshin. And it's stunning to be 50 years reporting things, some of which the athletes and executives don't want other people to know, and Tim Kirkshin doesn't have an enemy in this business. But I would also say that in the business that we're in, you go ahead and give me all of the people at the very top of the food chain in whatever it is that you consider sports content, and give me all the ones that are there because they're likable. Because the most famous ones, I don't think are. I don't think likability is one of the traits. I think you want people to listen to you, and you want the people who don't like you to also listen to you. And if they don't like you, as Howard Stern says, they often listen more than the ones who do. So when I say top of the food chain, and obviously Kirkshin's at the top of the food chain, but when I say the people in our industry that you regard as the most famous giver of sports opinions, give me the likable ones.
Well, let me start with Kirkshin doesn't really give sports opinions as much, right? A lot of his stuff is factual reporting and context. He'll give a lot of that, especially when he talks about historical things. But he's not out here saying like, oh, I think Skeens is the best pitcher in the game right now. He doesn't do that.
He does do some of that, but it's got the historical information and context that people understand. This is an expert, and he's not saying controversial things, and he's certainly not judging or smearing character very much or performance in a way that would be cruel, mean, or outsized, but that's more rewarded now than it ever is. So if I do a likability chart on whoever it is that you consider the ratings movers, for example, I'll give you one example, right? So yesterday on the show, I said I think it's unlikely Shannon Sharpe works at ESPN again, and I thought all of what Shannon did was carefully staged in order to make it look like that was his decision, and he did ESPN a favor by making it look like all of that, because I don't think ESPN wanted to make any of that worse than it already was by firing him, suspending him, or even commenting on any of what's happening there. So Shannon can exist doing the stuff that he's doing on the stuff he owns, but the stuff that other people own, he cannot do whatever he wants. But the argument against what I'm saying is, well, he moves the needle, Dan. There aren't that many who do. Like, he actually produces ratings, and then where does Disney or any corporate giant have to do the math of, in my lifetime, that all happens around someone, and they are not likely to return to Disney. But in this particular case, you have a totally different media landscape, and you've also got Disney getting in the business of, we're going to rent some of these mercenaries, free agents, people from the outside. We're going to give them platforms. We're not going to own them. We're going to give them independence so they can do other stuff. And so maybe under these circumstances, I've got it wrong. I don't think we'll see Shannon Sharpe on ESPN again, but maybe ESPN needs whatever it is that Shannon Sharpe is doing, because he is actually one of the few needle movers, but it's not because of likability. And I like him, but it's not because of likability. It's because he gives opinions. And the two things almost, I would say, can't coexist to be done the very best way that returns ratings, given that you're trying to do something that appeals to the broadest net of people, and therefore you're going to have people who watch you because they like your cruel. Stephen A. Smith's judgment of people has gotten more performative and more wrestling than it's ever been, at least in part, because it's obviously rewarded.
It works. Because it works. It works, and it goes back to the Cosell thing that you were saying, which is they listen to you because they like you, and if they don't like you, they listen to you even more. Or was it Howard Stern that said that? Either way, one of the Howards, right? One of the Howards said that. But it's true. And he's tapped into that. And if you're talking about Shannon Sharpe, my thought is he goes away. If he goes away and he's successful, wildly successful, they'll bring him back in because they bring back everybody who's wildly successful.
I think when you talk about a likability sports opinion giver, I think automatically of Dan Patrick, right? He's lived so many lives of ESPN anchor, Sports Center, biggest, show. Then he did his own thing. He's in Adam Sandler movies. Like, he's just a very likable guy, and I don't really think a lot of people say, I don't really like Dan Patrick. He's just a normal guy.
It's an excellent one, and I will tell you a story I've told before around here. I'm going to say it was 15 years ago. I'm walking through the bowels of the Heat's arena, and Dan Patrick is standing there. Can you guys look for me how long Dan Patrick has been doing his show? Because I make fun of Dan Patrick about this. I'm walking through the arena, and he says, I can't do what you do.
Says that to you?
Yes. And I look but it was before he was doing radio, right? It was just 3 hours of just giving opinions on things. And he's someone who's very careful. He's not cruel. When he criticizes somebody, it's usually fair. Like, this is part of it. When I say the two things almost can't coexist, likability and strong opinion giving, Dan doesn't give a ton of strong opinions, but when he does, like strong critical opinions, but when he does, they land with more resonance than others because he's picking his spots and not always doing that. It's not a daily conceit. And his audience, the audience that he has a very unique and special connection with, actually connects with him there. This is a person that I like because he's not out here pretending or behaving as if he's a know-it-all and that he knows better and more than anyone in sports. But that attitude does pay. Like, Dan Patrick's an outlier. It's much easier to do what it is that I'm doing or whatever it is. And I say all of this because I was legitimately confused. I'm not saying it's because I'm better at anything than Dan Patrick, other than being more strongly opinionated in ways that would bother people than Dan Patrick is.
I would say two things. Number one, Dan Patrick Show started October 2007. So they're coming up on their 20th year anniversary soon, too. Number two, I don't know. Dan sometimes comes across as a know-it-all. DP comes across as like a little bit like, hey, look, you guys don't understand this. I understand this. And look, I don't mind it, but I can definitely sense those vibes.
I'm with
you. It's definitely not like a Tim Kirkchen or a Scott Van Pelt kind of curiosity of like, I don't explain it to me.
Ernie Johnson.
Or Ernie.
But those guys are all
Ernie's a good
different.
one.
Those are guys that Ernie Johnson's the point guard, having other people feed opinions. Kirkchen's a factual reporter kind of guy. SVP, another guy that's kind of a point guard, giving, this guy from the game is going to talk about this or whatever. When you're talking about sports opinion givers, you kind of have to be a know-it-all because you're talking for 5 hours a day.
Rich Eisen? Does Rich Eisen?
Oh, no.
No? Not likable?
I just don't. I'm not saying he comes off as like a jerk, but I don't think of like, so likable. Like, he's somewhere in the middle.
It's really tough to give opinions and remain likable. Like, that's kind of the whole thing. Everyone that we're going to talk about in sports media who is likable, it's through spots where they're just giving you little bits of information or they're hosting and setting up other people.
As we talk about Pablo, though, and the point that we were making about the liberal elites, these used to be known as blue check marks, right? And there is a recoil when you get the applause of a media entity. When I'm sitting here telling you, people don't like journalism and they don't like journalists. And so all of that makes it a difficult thing to overcome if you don't have any respect for journalism. And on top of that, journalism has been so distorted that what Stephen A. Smith or Emmanuel Acho or whoever it is, or Colin Cowherd, whoever it is that's in the audience acquisition business, you see the compromises that end up getting made in search of that audience. And as the competition grows stronger, that's only going to get worse and worse. Like, you have to keep up. I don't know why it is that Chris Cody has a disdain or finds Rich Eisen something
I said
less
in the
than
middle.
likable.
Wow.
He's not. I put him in the Dan Patrick. I don't see Dan Patrick in the Tim Kirkchen category. I like Dan Patrick, but these guys are in the middle. Like, I don't see Eisen and Patrick as these like super likable. No one ever disagree. Like, these guys.
It's not. Likability is not a consensus.